Good evening, everyone. Can I welcome you to the Scrutiny Panel meeting of the 15th of March. Hardly seems a moment since we were last sitting around the table. Welcome to members of the public and councillors. I have to read out what action is to be taken in the event of an emergency. No practice evacuations planned for this evening, so if the alarms sound, it will be a real event. Evacuate the town hall by going down the main staircase and the back staircase, according to your wish, to the High Street or St Ranulph's car park. The meeting is being broadcast live over the internet on the council's YouTube channel and is also available to watch afterwards. Discreet use of mobile phones and other devices is most welcome. But you are requested to set them to silent and not use voice and camera flash functions. We'll have a break at 7:30 if the meeting hasn't concluded. Introductions: Dennis Willits, Chairman of the panel, Councillor for Lexton and Braeswick Ward.
Darius Laws, Rural North Ward.
William Sunnox, Rural North Ward, substituting for Councillor Lissamore.
Paul Smith, St Anne's and St John's Ward.
Councillor Sam McCarthy representing Shrub End Ward.
Mike Cooney representing Old Heath the Hythe and Rowhitch Ward.
Chris Pearson, Labour Councillor for Beer Church. I'm substituting for Councillor Lee Scordis this evening.
Councillor David King, Leader of the Council.
Good evening, Lindsay Barker, Deputy Chief Exec.
Matthew Brown, Economic Regeneration Manager.
Lucy Bredman, Strategic Director.
Richard Clifford, Democratic Services Manager.
Mel Rundle, Senior Support Panel.
And for the record, we have Councillor Fox sitting in the public gallery. Most welcome to join in at any point if you can make a useful contribution to help us out. We've dealt with substitutions, urgent items. There are none. Declarations of interest, non-indicated. Minutes, they're not to sign here. General, have your say.
There is nobody to have their say, Chair.
No decisions taken under special urgency. Item 8, cabinet or portfolio holder decisions called in for review. There are none. Item 9, items requested by members of the panel or other members of the council. Does any member of the panel have an item they wish adding to future work programmes? There are none, and none from members of the council. It takes us on to item 10, portfolio briefing from Councillor Steph Nissen. Unfortunately, as you know, she is ill and sends her apologies and will be fitted into the programme for the next civic year at an early opportunity. On to item 11, portfolio holder briefing from Councillor Martin Goss. Unfortunately, our IT system is so clever, we managed to get to the position where we thought we'd booked Martin Goss for this evening, but apparently we had not. So as chairman, I take full responsibility for his non-appearance this evening. I won't tell you whether he's gone to a better event or a worse event, but he's not here and it's my fault. That takes us on to item 12, city status update. And Lucy Bredman is presenting to us.
Thank you very much. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at the report, and apologies to Councillor Pearson, who is going to hear the same presentation, although hopefully there are some updates. So can we pull the presentation up, Owen, do you think, please?
Because of the way that they were dropping up on the laptop that's displayed. Just 20 minutes.
Okay, so I'll just make a start, and when the presentation comes up, we'll catch up. So the first part of the report talks about the year of celebration, and hopefully it's fairly self-explanatory, but it's all about celebrating and promoting all the great things we have over the year, celebrating and commemorating our heritage, celebrating the opportunity. Is it better if I just wait? Okay, I'll wait.
Is there anything in the slide which is not covered in the report? Anything which you need to
Yeah,
emphasise?
there are some things. So it would be good if we can pull it up.
Apologies, I don't, the link not being sent, I don't have access.
Yeah. Do you want me to send you the actual documents? Okey-doke.
I can say it's worth waiting for, Chair.
Oh, yes, you heard it as well.
I'm happy to.
Okay, I've just sent it. Yes, it is, yeah.
Yes.
Here it's here, sorry. Sorry, David, I'll start because it's here. I did send it actually the other day. You go to send. I did send it. Okay, so if we can go to the second slide, that would be great. Thank you. So year of celebration, I'll very quick through this one because I think it is self-explanatory. There's quite a lot about it in the report. It's all about, you know, celebrating this fabulous opportunity. There's a range of, if you can move to the next slide, please, Owen. There's a range of activities happening over the year. And probably if I just go to if you go to the next slide, the main ones are our event schedule, and this was the centre of our visitor information guide, which is out. At the time when we published this, it was November, so we didn't have as many on there as we've got now. There are many more people coming to and joining the party. So we've got lots of events. It's not just city centric in the urban area, it's rural as well. I'm glad to say we've got West Mersey Town Regattas joining the party. Leomani Summer Opera Festival is on there. We've just had confirmation literally today that the zoo is on board, and their Zubilee event, which is happening this year, is going to be part of the year of celebration, and they're going to have a bespoke rhino stamp made by the City Council, which they'll put on their website. And they're also doing some work with museums on the Gladiator exhibition. They're lending us a lion skull. So again, some good work across our educational teams between the museum and the zoo. And again, exciting news, which is an update for those of you that were at policy the other week. We have been in touch with Tiptree Jam, and we are going to have a year of celebration jam as well, which will be exclusively on sale at the Visitor Information Centre. So some really exciting things happening around the year of celebration, and a real sort of momentum with businesses and partners all getting on board with that. The City Council itself is sponsoring a number of events. The Siege Spectacular will be one of those. Our Heritage Open Weekend, which we do each year as well, and hopefully will be bigger and better than ever before. And of course, Gladiators, a day at the Roman Games. So they're the three key sort of City Council sponsored events. But actually, the year of celebration isn't just about us. It's about all of the things going on across the whole of the city, and it's shaping up to be superb. So just to show you the stamps, we have a toolkit that's out and available for all businesses to use. I think councillors, you've all been sent it as well, so you can use our lovely skyline, which you saw at the start, has been really accepted well. The Institute love it so much they're going to put it up on their walls in the Institute, and certainly and we'll probably have the graphics up in Rowan House as well. And people are really embracing the graphics and love the colours and the skyline. So that's all going well. As I said, it's not just about us. The bid playing a huge part in this as well. The year of celebration, a number of things going on. We've got videos. In fact, there's a range of videos, a new one hot off the press coming out in the next few days from the City Council as well. But there's already a couple out there from us, and there's some from the bid, and they really appeal to different audiences. So as you can imagine, the bid ones are all about the city centre. They're all about the day and the nighttime economy. There's a different feel to them. Our ones are much more about the centre and the rural area, and really just celebrating all the wonderful things we have. The bid sort of is straddling what I would say is the year of celebration and the longer term legacy work, as well as us and many of our partners. So again, as you can see on there, we've got them thinking about retail in the city centre as well, and then new retail ambition being launched. We're already all thinking about Christmas, and they've got some garden festival activities going on over the summer months as well. But also the bid, I suppose a key sort of point where we straddle that year of celebration and the longer term impacts and benefits of city status. The bid are leading on a new marketing collaborative, which again has come about, I think, because of the momentum that city status have given us. And we've tried it in the past. It hasn't always been easy to do, but actually what the bid are leading on is a collaborative of us thinking about how we can market in a different way going forward, in a more collaborative way. And we've got some really key people, Sam Good and his team, that are coming around the table. The first meeting actually is coming up, and I think that will make a real difference going forward. So when we start to think about this sort of link then onto, and I know in the briefing at the beginning, one of the things that I was asked to kind of come to you with is what difference has or will city status make? And what are the tangible things there? And as said in the report, it hasn't come with a magic bullet or extra funds or an instruction manual or how to implement it. City status was actually part of an existing ambition. I think we have gone for it a few times, that the council and partners have held for quite some time. And it's all about putting Colchester on the map. And some of the most important events in British history have taken place in Colchester. And I think city status is about acknowledging that. So city status isn't separate to our existing strategic priorities and to those of our partners. And our partners have been really, they have asked us not to come up with a separate strategy around city status. We're focusing on the things we already have, the co-produced economic strategy that's hot off the press, our co-produced cultural strategy, which was launched last year. And in these are all of our ambitions and our aspirations, which city status is part of and builds on. And actually what we do have to do is look for any gaps. We have to learn from others, and we have to make sure we seek out opportunities. But from an economic and a social perspective, city status helps us do a number of key things. And probably the most important of those are raising aspirations, our image and our reputation. Being a city gives Colchester influence, it carries weight, it adds to the importance of us as a regional and economic hub. The royal visit will have raised awareness of the city, regionally, nationally, and even internationally. It acknowledges our historic importance. It gains us attention, and many will want to see what Colchester's all about. It's a credit to those in tourism and hospitality and leisure who've believed in Colchester and invested for decades, and improved their offerings. And certainly going forward, Colchester is in a great place now to welcome visitors because of that investment. And the bid is already noticing that Colchester is on investment lists that it wasn't previously on. And Visit Britain has included Colchester in its International New Cities campaign. So we're already seeing some benefits. Showcase of £40 million worth of regeneration for the city centre, and you're going to hear about some of that tonight. And Matthew's going to share a bit about a very specific element of that, the levelling up funding, which I think will hopefully give you some tangible examples of the difference that city status will make and some of the improvements that we're going to see, not in decades, but in the next few years to come. So I'm going to hand over to Matthew now, who's going to take us through a quick summary of some of the heritage improvements that the levelling up funding and towns deal is going to bring us.
Thank you, Lucy. So as Lucy's already summarised, we've got those two pots of money, town deal, which is 18.2, I say 19.2, including the accelerated funding, and 20 million of levelling up funding, which we're treating as one combined programme under the banner We Are Colchester. The vast majority of that is being spent in the city centre. In fact, all of the levelling up fund and probably about half or just over half of all the town deal funding is being sent in the core city centre. And in terms of timescales, the delivery of those is such that the town deal is already in delivery. Some projects are actually already on site right now. And if those that aren't, will be very shortly. The levelling up fund is at the stage of mobilisation, and we will be delivering as much as we can by March 2020. Can I have the next slide, please, Aaron?
2025.
Sorry, 2025. That's the one. If not, we're a bit late. So what I've done in this, as Lucy's mentioned, I've gone for a sort of focus on heritage and culture. As you can appreciate, there are 16 town deal projects and 7 levelling up projects. I'm not going to try and cover all of those. It's just there's no time. But just in terms of culture and heritage and the city centre and the impact, what I've got here is a few examples of those projects. So the Jumbo Water Tower is going to be restored, repaired, refurbished, and become a real attraction in its own right through about £1.5 million of town deal, plus some co-funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund, which the North Essex Heritage Trust have now bid for. The bid is in. They've got some more work to do, but that's in progress. It's going well in terms of building that wider funding package. Holy Trinity Church, the oldest standing building in the city centre, built in 1050 or thereabouts. We have already secured the town deal funding of just over £500,000, but I'm also going after a further 1.4 million of co-funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund, which again, similarly to Jumbo, will mean refurbishment, restoration, and repurposing that building for future use, in this case as a community hub, community centre. And then I've also mentioned some of the public realm schemes. There's a number of public realm schemes across the city centre. The example on the screen is Holy Trinity Square. So on both sides of the church, north and south, the churchyards will become open to the public. They'll be refreshed. There'll be new paths. It will be an open area, reflecting it's in the heart of the core retail centre, the cafe culture. It will really reinforce the look and feel of that really important part of the city centre. And then finally, for now, we've also got some 5G enabled or virtual reality enabled tourism, which is quite exciting and innovative. And that will focus initially on the castle and parts of the Roman wall. So again, city centre attracting, an attractive part of the offer to visitors and tourists. Next slide, please. Thank you. So similarly with levelling up fund, I'm not going to go for the whole scheme, but just summarise it. Focus is entirely on the southeast corner of the city centre, around St Botolph's roundabout and that area, and we're investing in the whole of that area really that's shaded within that red boundary. There's a lot of opportunity here to do stuff with the heritage and recognising we've got the Roman wall, the town wall that passes through Priory Street and Vineyard Street. We've got the Priory, which is pretty much. And a lot of people come to the city, don't even realise it's there. It's not very well signposted. It's not very accessible. It kind of gets neglected, even though it's in a really prominent position and it's a really attractive asset. I'll come on in a minute how we're going to join these up. But the other thing this helps us to do by overcoming the severance issues of Southway and the roundabout is other assets like Roman Circus, which isn't very far away from here, suddenly become more accessible, more easy to get to for people on foot and by bike. And it also means you can then couple up these attractions together, so the castle, the Priory, Roman Circus, as a more cohesive offer, and have better signposting and interpretation and wayfinding, so it starts to become a more seamless, more holistic, attractive offer for visitors. Can I have the next slide, please, Aaron? So my final slide, I said I'd be quite succinct, is what we want to do here is you'll see from the top left going across the middle going across to the right, and then you've basically got a linear route that's in the red box in the middle, which starts literally on the platform of course, the town station, and it ends at the back of the Curzon Cinema. And what that will give you is an attractive through route for pedestrians, recognising currently the visitor experience is not great. If you were to get off a train and you've never been to Colchester before, your first experience is St Botolph's Roundabout, Osborne Street. It's not a great environment. It doesn't look great. It's tired, it's dated. We want to change that. So we're investing in this route to provide an alternative step-free access from the platform directly into what will be Britannia Yard, and then onto the Priory itself, which will be improved with better paths, better lighting. It will be lit at night, even though it's not open at night. It will be lit so the skyline, you have an attractive skyline for the first time, because those assets are there, but you can't see them at night. And then onwards to Priory Street, across Priory Street, across, and then some new steps and a ramp, which will take you onwards, where you can't go there at the moment. There's no access through there, and ultimately up to the Curzon, where there'll be wayfinding to First Sight to the right, or Castle and the other end of the sort of east end of the High Street to the left. So that brings you a nice, cohesive, attractive sort of package, which is all about that visitor experience. I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
And then this is over to David, if you wanted to.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. Well, it's just nice to come in on the back of such a constructive and positive piece. What I wanted to do here, Chair, was just to answer the sort of questions in the air around legacy, at least to provide a degree of framework, which we'll continue to revisit, because there is a point here about trying to capture the changes that we can see are in prospect. There are some really good examples of possibilities. There are investments in negotiation, but the nature of an investment negotiation is only when it's finally sealed and it's delivered can be then counted. But I think it's helpful to just have this sort of framework, a way of thinking about this, which is accepting, as described, what we're doing is building upon the year celebration and strengths we've got. The levelling up and town dealing investments, and build on it, taking our strengths to sort of take us through, widen it out in terms of the way that we look at our city. This is a conversation that I had again today, and I will continue to do it with both those who have an interest in investment in the city and those who have an interest in marketing the city. We've long had a narrow view of this. We've talked about the city in the sense of the high street and a bit beyond it, down that street and then up to Jumbo to the walls. It's so much richer than this. And there is a widespread acceptance that now that the way we have to look at a city of such a scale of possibility and practically of delivery is 3 centres and then 2. So the historic cultural centre, the heritage centre of which we're in a part of right now, which offers vibrancy of shopping and places to eat and drink and have a good time. So visiting experience, but it's much more than that. And we hope in the years ahead to enrich that. Take that as just one part of the equation. Add to that what was contested for such a long time, the developments around Stanway and Tollgate and Stane Park, without a commentary on what's working well or not. There's no doubt that there is a demand for those facilities. They are well used. They offer a supplement to what we have in the traditional centre. To recognise that we've got Northern Gateway as a regional quality, national quality, in some respects, centre for sports, and for much more, including entertainment. So the modern way in which people spend their lives is going to be really met well. By the end of this year, that will be opening, and the demand we see coming through, we've got to touch on Turnstone later, for the units, despite commercial uncertainties elsewhere. Now, there's a very strong demand. So that we have every reason to think, given its location, its geographics, that part of the city, that edge of the city is going to be a success as well. That gives us 3 points of reference in a way that we haven't thought about, or acted upon. And then we have the one we don't often recognise and haven't included enough, in my view, which is the university. Now, despite a campus first approach, for many good reasons, the University of Essex, as a world-class university, absolutely accepts, and in my short time with you, much more than it did before, I think, and that's required us both to step towards each other, that its presence on the edge of and in the city of Colchester, that is a benefit in so many ways to so many of us, but also the cities standing, status, facilities and opportunities are also a huge advantage to them in a competitive world. And then that gets us to that yet richer picture, the things we don't talk about, and which I know that many members from rural and other areas think are not given enough attention. And I have sympathy with that. I think it's one of those changes we yet will make in terms of where our attention goes, and that's rural, non-urban, coastal, away from the urban centres, city of Colchester. And we're in my view, we're in a process of absolutely recognising that that new composition, it's been there but not recognised, if recognised, if exploited, if used, if marketed, is going to offer some huge strengths. It's an amplification of message and market, and frankly, opportunities. When investors come to Colchester, they look for a city, they look at what they can see in terms of vibrancy of place and footfall. They're looking at the cash register, all of which are doing well compared to our competitors, significantly better than some nearby. But they also look at the city of Colchester as a place to live. So that whole sense of place in a richer way is a real strength we've not made enough of. And perhaps that's one of the biggest things I want to bring out, because it's a step change in the way in which we are thinking, and it's a step change in the way in which partners are thinking, and it's a step towards some who felt excluded from that vision of the city of Colchester in its widest sense. So that legacy, in terms of how we see each other, how we look for prosperity and opportunity and quality of life together, is going to dominate, in my view, the work that lies ahead, and it's going to influence significantly the success that I believe we're on the edge of. We're on a tilt. When outsiders come and say, as the LGA did, you know, you're on the cusp of something great, they're not looking just at the city council, at you and I. They're looking at how we're situated as a place on a cusp of change, and how well we're managing it. And that really touches on grow and collaborate as well. So I won't add more to my tale than this. It's been very well set out. The important thing, and I'm talking to business, talking to Sam Good today, the important thing is that this then translates. As I say, I would welcome, and we will take it away, that challenge, which is in your minds, which is, can you show us measurably? Absolutely can tell you that the things we're talking about are happening. In the years that lie ahead, the challenge will be for us, the reasonable challenge, so that we do understand our economy well and our opportunities well, is to link those decisions around city status and city opportunity in that richer sense to what then changes on the ground for the lives of people. But we are well on the path towards starting to see the fruits come through. I'll stop there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And as an aside, following the leader's summary, can I reiterate again that what we need is a lexicography of terms because the word city is being used in many different contexts. Last night we had a police officer here, the chief inspector, who, when he says city, he means just this area, the stress area. And from a policing point of view, that is what is meant. Clearly, the leader means the city means the geographic area of the administrative city, and I think it's causing lots of confusion as to what it means. And someone needs to, the old Chinese saying here, who defines the terms wins the argument. And we need a clear understanding which we can all use and adhere to for when talking about the historic city or the wider city or the three city centres from a commercial point of view. And I think the arguments will be clearer if we immediately know what we're talking about. My next concern is that This particular item of scrutiny is looking at city status, and everything seems to get mixed together. We have major problems, the levelling up problem, the town project, the town deal project, other projects coming along, and they're all being grouped together. And I think we have to have a scheme of looking with greater granularity at the impact each of them is making. If on every occasion, no matter what we scrutinise, it becomes the new strategic plan with its 4 or 5 major components, it becomes increasingly difficult to see whether each component in that equation is pulling its weight, is making a positive contribution. So it was notable that on the city status item, a lot of the talk was actually about the next item, the town deal projects, because many minds they're indistinguishable from the long-term future of the city. And for purposes of scrutiny, we need to be able to look at each particular segment of work and say, how much have we got? What is it doing? Is it on track? Are targets being met? Are the advantages which each of those major groups of projects was proclaimed as having, are they actually reaping the benefits? Are the benefits being perceived by the people of the wider city? I think our enthusiasm at times always leads us into the same view. Here's the strategic plan. This is what we're delivering, and we treat it as one entity rather than several component entities.
Can I, for my part, say, and I welcome Lindsay adding anything else to that she wants. We're very clear on this, and tonight will be an opportunity to go where you need to go. We recognise, and we've got project disciplines here, rightly so, which will require us as a council to show, and project teams to show what's been done against the objectives set, what's been delivered. Indeed, a lot of it's physical, so with that we're going to see. But in terms of cost and benefits and outcomes, we are working with a very set criteria for the town deal and the Levelling Up Fund. The ones agreed for, set with government, and we will have to answer for them. The teams will be happy to answer for them here. But the first item was city status, and I can play back your words to you, Dennis, and it's absolutely appropriate for the reasons that you said. It is enmeshed. The sense of the future and the way the city is changing includes the way in which not just how we're celebrating, but how we're changing that city. But the point you've made is absolutely taken, and there's absolute assurance on this. There'll be no other way for us to work other than to track how we're doing against the promises made and for the sums expended. And I hope that you will not find that challenge, that we should be ready to answer segment by segment. But this opening item inevitably has a degree of composite.
If I can just add to that, Chair, I mean, I think when we, we'll come on to it on the town deal programme, but when we bought the town deal programme back in November, you very helpfully asked us about outcomes. And of course, outcomes are measurable once projects are delivered. It's quite hard to measure them when you're in train. So we're kind of tracking outputs at the moment that we've agreed with government that we will deliver at certain times and with certain funding streams. But it will be the outcomes and the impact of these projects and the programmes on the place and on the people and on some of those key, particularly around levelling up, some of those key inequalities measures that are really important. So I think the challenge here is the point at which you're able to scrutinise, because of course what you don't want to do is to kind of do an audit, because we're subject to lots of audits, as was quite rightly outlined by the leader, because it's government money that we have to be accountable for, almost every penny of it, quite rightly. It's about how we measure the impact and the outcomes. So I just think it's about the point in the process that you're able to scrutinise effectively. And of course, we're right at the beginning at the moment, but I absolutely believe we should keep, you know, in the annual update to scrutiny, particularly on levelling up and the town deal programme, for which I'm responsible. You know, I think you quite rightly, as we move through that, we'll want to hear more and more and more about what have we managed to achieve in terms of those outcomes that we said we would achieve when we put the business cases together. So if that's helpful, I think at the moment, on a lot of this, we're going to struggle because we haven't delivered it yet. So that would just be my contribution. But I think it's, you know, you really helpfully reminded us of that last time, and we haven't forgotten it, Chair.
So can I put the question that I think we've touched on in the past? Are we going to treat a scrutiny of city status as a scrutiny of the entire programme, in effect the council's strategic plan, which now takes on board city status? Or are we looking at what city status has actually, the opportunities that it's given and the additional opportunities which we have, which wouldn't have been there had city status not been granted? For instance, the town deal and levelling up funds would have been there regardless of city status. And I think it's really difficult to argue that those monies would not have been made available if we just continue to be the most prosperous town around and hadn't been a city. So the question, therefore, is what are the extras? And this is something I've been trying to tease out, and I find it very difficult to do. We used to have we had an old strategic plan which included most of the things we've got at the moment. We have a new strategic plan which includes most of the things that were in the old strategic plan. On top of that, we add city status. And I'm finding it very difficult to actually understand what advantages are coming through as a result of city status. If they're not, I don't think it really matters, because we have the new strategic plan and we're going to follow that through in any case. But we made so much hype about city status and how important it is. We should therefore be able to differentiate those extra things, the extra mile we're able to go, because we now have city status. Now that is, to me, is quite difficult. I'm not sure how we differentiate that within the programme and come up with the quantification of the benefits of city status. Now, it may well be at the end of this session, you say it is not possible to do that. And city status is so ingrained, or the anticipation of city status is so ingrained, it is not possible, just not technically, economically possible to define what are the advances that we have been able to make over what we would otherwise have done with city status. It may be an ephemeral type of addition to each project, which we cannot quantify. But given the hype that we've had on city status, it seems a lost opportunity not to ask the question, what are we achieving now? What extras are we achieving now that we have city status?
Thank you. I absolutely accept that. I think if we just go back one, and we've had this conversation once before, so I hope this will be the last time. We'll go away and understand how it would be better framed for the committee. But I think for us collectively, a couple of sessions in which we ensure we're clear on how the city is viewed, how it has just run through a number of different factors will make lasting impacts upon this place, this city, and how our thinking is changing about the city is, in my view, respectfully, decent use of our time. But your point's absolutely taken. We shouldn't keep going around we shouldn't so push together every single thing that's good that's happening in the city, and then use your time to do that when actually it'd be quite reasonable, subject to the limitations and practicalities that Lindsay's just described, to take them section by section or any form that works for officers and works for you. What I said, what I described was things in train in terms of legacy. I did my best to frame that. We cannot yet put a number to it, but there will be some numbers coming through, but there will always be this conversation, your words, about what is ethereal and what is not. There is substance in here, When investments come because people looked at a place because it's a city and not, well, that's something you could tie to city. But I think the value of that discussion will get less over time. The more, a better way of framing it would be looking at economic development and change in this place, now a city. So I think there is something of this being a passing moment. But we can come back to you for in the exploitation. We can set out how and we have today, how we're exploiting our new status as a city. We can describe it. Some of this will be measurable. The events that we are undertaking this year with our partners, that richer calendar than ever before, it's not just a sheet of paper, is it? You know, it's dozens of things that are happening, which our joint marketing and joint approach, the new approach as a city, will have a material effect upon footfall, numbers, visitors, income, money into the city, and eventually in jobs. But some of this will be very tangible and demonstrable, and some of this clearly will be an extrapolation. So I think there's something of a choice for us, Chair, which perhaps we can have a sidebar conversation about way from here. But I take the central point that there is a limited value beyond this couple of attempts to show where we are and where we're heading and doing the same thing again. And a narrower look at the benefits of city will be an entirely reasonable thing for us to do, but we'll have to accept again that the evidence is going to emerge over time.
Yeah, I agree. It's not essential that it is done. It's only asked for because of the hype that surrounds the city status. So can we move on to other speakers? The first was Sam.
Thanks very much, Chair. You're going to love this because mine's a nice fluffy question and I'm enthusiastic about city status. And I think one of the benefits of being a city is we have an opportunity to celebrate and have a really good year. And this nation is very good at pomp and ceremony. So let's do it. I just want to brush on marketing, if I can, where with regard to the joint approach on marketing. Obviously, we have lots of different social media campaigns. You know, bid, have in cultures, visit culture, blah, blah, blah. Are we going to have a joint one? Or how do we kind of succinctly put it all together? The other thing is, and the leader mentioned this, in people feeling left out. A lot of people don't use social, or a lot of people don't follow the social medias. Obviously, Visit Culture to have a booklet that you can order a hard copy of. Will we have hard copies laying about? Will we have them in other cities? Say, you know, Ipswich. I know we've had things at Liverpool Street before. York, for example. Are we going to have stuff there over the next few years that promotes us and bringing people to us? Oh, let's go to York. Why not go to Colchester? Well, Darius Law's kind of levels of excitement here when it comes to this kind of thing. The other thing is with bus stops, buses, you know, billboards. Are we going to have stuff promoting the events that we're going to have on throughout this year of celebration rather? And that's basically it, really. I know, and you know, we discussed a lot of this in the policy panel. This is very much a policy panel kind of thing, this year of celebration. But I don't think I asked this, so I'd like to find out a bit more about the marketing, because I think we're doing a good job so far. But you know, I want to make sure as many people are being reached as possible.
So I can answer a few things specifically there. So I think the joint marketing approach, we've got terms of reference and we've got the first meeting on the table. And again, because this is being led by the bid, it's a collaborative approach. I wouldn't want to speculate too much on exactly what's going to come out of that, but I think we can update with you. What I would say is that it absolutely is about a shared vision. That's key to this, is that we all have a shared vision. And actually, in the research that we've done so far, one of the things that has come out is that while we all share some real aspirations around better health and well-being and reduced inequalities, there isn't a really concise shared vision of what Colchester, the city of Colchester, looks like going forward. And to come up with that, so we all have something to galvanise around, is something that certainly the marketing group will be looking at. So that's one thing. In terms of hard copy, I can hear Claire in my ear now from the Visitor Information Centre, and she would absolutely say that there is still a place for hard copy marketing and advertising, and we do that. It's getting more challenging because actually places and spaces don't want hard copy. So for example, you know, we would like hard copy at stations, but stations don't want hard copies because somebody has to look after it, somebody has to replenish it, so it takes resource. So we're sort of in a place at the moment where less and less places actually want to deal with hard copy, in the same way that less and less places want to deal with cash because of the cost that comes with that. But there is still a place for it, and we still do produce it. And certainly that will continue as long as there's a market for it. In terms of billboards, we haven't got any specific plans for billboards at the moment, but what we have got with the strategic priorities, we have asked for some funding, some additional funding for tourism marketing. And at the moment, you know, we're hopeful that we'll get that funding through the strategic plan priorities. And then we'll have a range of things that we'll go away and think about as to what we could spend that additional funding on. I'm sure those kind of things will come out of that, because they usually do. So definitely, we're really pleased to be able to get some additional funding, and we'll look at spending that as wisely as we can.
Councillor Sunnox.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. It's cleared up a lot of things in my mind. It's quite clear from what we're saying that it's a mindset or a common vision that we're talking about the city. And our challenge is to convert that into something tangible. And what I want to say is that I'd really like to see it. I feel encouraged when I see that list of events, because that's something we're actually going to do. I feel discouraged when we start talking Treasury, a green book that will show how many jobs or how much it's added to the value added to the economy or something like that, because that's a bit ephemeral. And I represent rural North, where of course the word city, it doesn't resonate. In fact, I don't want to be unpositive. I'm positive about it basically, but I do have to say that the word city sort of, if you're sitting out in the countryside, Colchester's potentially, I'm not saying it's there yet, potentially a donut with the prosperity on the ring on the outside. You don't have to come to the city centre. And we need to see those plans for the city centre in tangible, details. I was pleased to see a picture of the church, how the churchyard was going to be laid out. That means something. A lot of the strategic talk doesn't mean anything to my residents, doesn't mean anything to me, quite honestly. I'm very used to that sort of talk. We really need to get this down to the challenge here is to get it down to the nuts and the bolts, see lines on drawings, actual plans coming out and getting people behind them. Slightly different approach from what we've been talking about.
Can I just come in for a second on the rural side of things? I think just absolutely acknowledge that. And just to add to that, we do meet regularly with the parish town council clerks. We have shared the city status work with them. They understand what you've seen. And I think one of the things that our engagement work has shown up with, a huge amount of engagement has been done over the last few years, both for the cultural strategy, the economic strategy, and for the strategic plan. But actually, there are a few areas where there are gaps. One of them is that the rural, that we feel we could do more engagement rurally around what does city status mean for you, and the other one is around young people. So they're two areas where we'll specifically look at how we can engage further around those.
If I can suggest for the rural thing, if we can think of events and locations and things to do, not PR and words.
Absolutely. And there's also the Rural Prosperity Fund, which again, we're talking to our rural communities about. So again, something very tangible for businesses that are in rural locations.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. I think probably like you, I was fairly ambivalent about city status when Darius was enthusiastically pushing it forward as the portfolio holder nearly 2 years ago now. But I've seen enough, I've heard enough to be an enthusiastic convert. So I've seen this presentation twice now, as well as some of the early musings that came before the policy panel. And I think there's some really good stuff in there. And I would just suggest that scrutiny needs to be cautious about getting bogged down in the minutiae and not seeing the bigger picture about what city status actually means for the future of Colchester. And I think Darius got it. It's taken me a bit longer, Darius, but we are where we are, and I think we're doing very well with it. There were some of the things that came out. I know at policy panel, local member for Tiptree suggested that we approached Wilkins and Sons about a celebration jam, and I think that's a really good thing to hear, that that's going forward. Can I suggest that we might want to, if we can, and I was having a look trying to work out what we could do with it. I know my better half and I constantly have a discussion about whether or not jam should go on top of the clotted cream or beneath the clotted cream. But what I was but thinking about that, could we run a competition with Tiptree jam for somebody to design a cake or a cob, or I mean, the only thing I could come up with is Colchester cob, but I'm sure somebody with marketing expertise could come up with something better. And say, you know, this is not just a Colchester residents competition, but a competition that puts Colchester city status on the wider map throughout the UK by using, you know, one of our worldwide recognized companies to just celebrate city status. So that's one thing I was thinking about. The public realm drawings, and I take Councillor Sunnock's point here. I think there are some interesting little drawings that we've seen in that presentation that ought to be on our website, showing what the public realm benefits of what we're doing here will actually look like, to give residents of Colchester some idea of what city status will actually bring for them. The other thing I was going to say is just around the Abbey Gate through St. Botolph's to the Roman Circus. I think that's a great idea, but what we don't have at the moment is something that connects that and draws the picture together. And bearing in mind what Councillor McCarthy was saying, I don't see any reason why in the 21st century we couldn't have some sort of online QR coded guide to Colchester, to the history of Colchester. We have enough very recognizable historians in this city who could put something together, and I think, you know, the cost would be minimal to do that. And finally, I would just say that policy panel has seen the evolution of what we're intending to do to celebrate city status over the last 12 months. And throughout that, members of the policy panel have been quite clear that the celebration of city status should not be city-centric, that it should take in the whole of the city, including the rural parts.
Chair, if it's okay, I just wanted to pick up the points that have been quite rightly made about the kind of visualization of all of this. And I will just mention that we've only had, for example, the levelling up funding for a matter of weeks. And on top of already delivering or trying to deliver, you'll hear in the next item, you know, the town deal programme. So there is a lot going on. But I just wanted to reassure you, so particularly in the city centre, but I'm really keen it doesn't become about the city centre, that we expand the opportunity to the whole of the wider area of the city. We're looking to develop the clarity around what's coming in a visual way. I'm really visual. I really struggle at the moment without being able to show it to people. So we're working very hard in the background to try and find companies who've got some technology that we can exploit to help us bring it to life. So because the vision is great, but actually we've got so much stuff in train that we already need to communicate that's already happening all the way across the borough, that I think if we can start to bring a visual tool together that's based upon a map of the area that you can go into and understand what's happening in each part of the city in more detail and understand some of the stories and the kind of why are we doing stuff in different places, I think it will be really helpful. Councillor King and the Team Colchester partnership with the County Council are really keen on this. At the moment, it is just simply us trying to bring the resources together and try and find what technology there is out there to exploit to make this happen in a way that then we can share with residents, because I just think it would be really helpful for people to be able to see it and understand what's coming, because actually there's so much going to happen in Colchester over the next 2, 3, 4 years, quite apart from what will happen as a result of the city status in the longer term, that we need to bring that to life. So I just wanted to reassure you, but I also just wanted to be realistic in that we are running at absolute pace here at the moment to make sure we can gear up and not lose the confidence that has been put in us in Colchester, particularly by the government to deliver on the ground, because that's why we got the Levelling Up Fund. So just wanted to reassure you, we are working very hard on it, and I'd be really delighted to share it with all members as soon as we get to a point where that's able to be shared.
And of course, perhaps one of the objectives of the scrutiny panel is we want to make people run harder, more enthusiastically, with greater efficiency, but we don't necessarily want to do their job for them. Listening to Councillor Pearson, it is a good reminder there is another organisation, the policy panel, which is dealing with the nuts and bolts of this, you know, whether the jam goes on in the middle or on top. And our panel's remit is not to redo the work or duplicate the work of the policy panel. Our real role is to say, how well is it being done? Is it being effective? Is it being efficient? Rather than just seconds gaining what they are already doing. And it is tempting on these occasions to go right down to the individual events that are being planned and see whether we can do it better in competition with the policy panel. And that is not what we're here for. We're here, I think, this evening to make sure that everything that should be done is being done, and it's being done in a way which we consider to be effective, enthusiastic, and in the general interests of the residents of the borough. So WISO scheme should be reported to the policy panel. Any suggestions for gaps or areas where things can be done better, let's hear them now.
Just respectfully admonish you, Chair, it's the city, not the borough.
Sorry, Councillor Lilly is next.
Well, I'm with Councillor Summix on this, and the difference between townies and rural people is pretty obvious. We have Councillor Pearson going on about the city, which includes all of the villages and everything else, but I'm afraid that will never happen on a million years until they're probably inclusive in that. It's got people in Rowhedge. Well, we don't live in a city, we live in a village, and it's the town and all the city, and the way you talk about it and the way we look at it, everything's geared up to be spent on the city centre and nowhere else, as per usual in the last 30 or 40 years in a rural perspective, where parish councils always seem to be pay a lot to get nothing back. And we're talking here tonight, and the issue is city status update. And what is the update? Well, it's too early to say, really. Councillor King summed it up that when he said that being a city status could lead to businesses and more investment coming in. And that's it. That's the update, because nothing's happened. All the events that you've put down were going to happen anyway, weren't they? Every year the same thing happens, and every year inclusive. Oh, let's include Rowhedge Regatta. I don't see that in here again. So once again, we're left out. You're talking about inclusive. Okay, you've left us out again. With no regatta. Where's that? Nowhere. We have West Mersey Regatta. Great. But there are 3 regattas, and we all share the same boats, the same events, and we all do it together on the water like that. But that is another, that's inclusive, No, we're not. People in Old Heath, we're coming up to the sewage season. Where's the investment level funds in our area? What are you spending on investment in concluding the nuisance of the smell every year? We won't mention the flooding, the same thing. Where is the level of funding for that? There's no plans to do that because you've put all the money aside for the city centre again. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you have plans to spend it in the rural areas. Dedham needs more investment. Dedham is one of the most famous places around in Essex. Where's the further investment in there? Nowhere. So, as you can tell, I was indifferent about whether a city or town. I got on the bus town police, and it just comes naturally because we're of that era. I'm yet to be convinced of it, but I believe it's too early to have this here today because it's only just started. In a year's time, I'd want you to come along and say, we have 10 businesses have come in because it's a city. Great. And I'll be really convinced that I should just shut up for the future of that. But it's too early to have this. And I think that we've concluded most of it. You should go back to policy panel and let them deal with it. They did it start off with and let them finish it off. But I rest my case there, Chair, and I look forward to the Levelling Up Fund being invested in proper all of areas. Perhaps we'll be called a city altogether.
Yes, but even at the beginning of a project, one should have targets. If in a year's time we're reporting that 10 businesses have come to Colchester City because of the work of the Inward Investment Office that has been set up as one of these projects, then at this time we should be saying the target, the restated target, because we're a city, is 10 new businesses, each with at least 100 employees coming to the city. And if you don't have the targets, and if we don't scrutinise the targets and say those are reasonable targets, then perhaps it doesn't happen, perhaps it does happen. Depends how well we scrutinise the strategic plan.
I look forward to being this time next year.
Coming back on one very specific point that for Councillor Lilly, and that is on the year of celebration, that they're not excluded. They just haven't asked to be included. So it's the invitation's gone out to everybody. This is about us giving free advertising for all these events that join the party. And we've offered to make stamps up specifically for events. So we would be delighted to have Roe Hedge Regatta join the party and become part of the year of celebration. And it doesn't mean they can't do it now. It's open, until the event happens, they can be included. So, please do go back to, yeah.
And via the policy panel, not via the scrutiny panel minutes.
When you talk about stamps, are we talking about proper first-class stamps, or because I'm a bit of a stamp fiend myself? I have a stamp collection.
Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Chair. Or perhaps Councillor Lilly and I will, in our lifetimes, enjoy a scenario where we're all tripping over the tourists and struggling to get on a fantastic public transport system that can get you to Roe Hedge and myself 6 miles north of here to the River Stour. A few points on, I know we have Marks and Spencer's Food Hall and the Zara as well. What are the learnings from Chelmsford and Southend? Are we at an officer level? Are we having conversations? What went really well? What didn't? I can kind of understand the approach where we don't have a duplication of a management organisation, so I sympathise with that, and I wonder if that's the case that happened in Chelmsford. And if we're going to continue down that route, I again offer challenge on the 2040 date because I don't understand the significance of it. I think we should be full guns blazing Roman, and I think we should say 2043 or 2049 because they are significant dates, 2,000 years on from significant events. And it's a question in itself
because us here as politicians and members of the public will be saying, why are we working towards a 2049 vision? What does that mean? And then suddenly you say, well, that's 2,000 years on from when we first became a city. So it kind of makes sense. I just think that's an easy win to go for if that was something that we had an influence in. So I think that's my question. What Chelmsford and Southend done that's great or not great? What are we learning on that front?
So we have asked, we haven't had anything very tangible back. We did, certainly from Southend, there was around £200,000 that was spent on celebrating and marketing the city and the celebrations that went on through but nothing tangible around. And that's one of the things we're not going to stop trying to find out. And actually our key cities work is probably an area where we'll learn from other cities, because we don't want to miss any opportunities. But actually those two you mentioned, we have asked and we've got nothing.
Yeah, sorry, just to add on that one, because I think Southend is slightly different, because we definitely did ask and Karen Turnbull approached them, but they're taking a much more reflective approach, and they are spending time working in their communities because they've got some quite deep-seated problems that we all understand. So they're not going for a quick, they're taking time to build up what their legacy needs to look like with their communities on a very bottom-up approach. So, you know, I think they would share whatever they have. But actually, I'm not sure, I mean, there's learning in there, but it's a very different approach because of the nature in which they got their city status award. So I just wanted to say that about them because they were very helpful. They're just approaching it in a very different way.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I welcome the power line conversion of Councillor Pearson to the delights of a city, and of course we look forward to the meeting of the policy panel where they discuss that you put the cream on first and then the jam goes on top. My mother comes from Devon, so that has
That's the Devon.
so that has, you know, that's got to be the way. I'm also really intrigued about the jam. I suspect we'll have a great debate as to what colour the jam should be, and we'll miss the point that what we should be looking at is how good it tastes and how well it promotes the town. It's all, or the city rather, and of course it has solved my Christmas shopping problems. So that's great. More seriously, I want to look at how we're developing the skills that we're going to need, because the growth that we're seeing starting to happen already is encouraging. But our big issue, particularly in some of the urban areas, is a lack of skills, because we still have a low wage economy in Colchester and we need to get that increased. And the best way to do that is to have a better skilled workforce to do that. So I'm interested in looking at those aspects of what we're doing. And I think those are important for a lot of those areas in the centre of the donut who are really concerned and really struggling at the moment with the financial circumstances. So I want to know how we can use the fact that we've got city status to come up. And Chairman, if I can use one other thing, I think city status is a bit like adding a new player to the football team. You hope it's going to improve the situation, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult to tell whether it's that player's contribution that resulted in you winning the matches, even if it was the player that scored all the goals, or whether it's fact that you'd have done very well without them, and actually it's not. And I think city status is going to be something like that, where it's going to be very hard to say to an employer, you came here because of city status. No. Why did you start thinking about culture? Well, I saw it on the TV when King Charles visited and it looked a nice place. So I came down for the weekend, and then I found out you had a university, and then I found out that there was this very nice retail site that was becoming available up at Northern Gateway for my business. And I thought that was absolutely great. So I moved in there. Yeah, that's the sort of way real businesses work. So I think it'll be very hard to identify that, but I'm confident it will be there. But let's try and make sure that we have the skills to make sure we benefit from it. So.
Would you like me to come back on that one, Chair? I think that is one of the central issues for the future, if I'm honest. And I'd love to be able to tell you that we've got a plan and, you know, we're going to get it cracked. Clearly, it's one of the key strands in the administration's economic strategy that's just passed through. But it is one of those areas where it relies on that kind of deep collaboration. So there's already work going on with the Alliance around skills, because they see it as one of the key determinants of health, and you know, really keen to kind of invest in skills pathways. The slightly frustrating thing is that the Shared Prosperity Fund that we were awarded, most local authorities were awarded across the country, which of course is repurposed European funding. We can't access the investment in skills until year 3 of that, because of the requirements of how that funding came back from Europe to be used in our local areas. So we've got 1 more year to wait, but that doesn't mean we're waiting. So all of those programs that we want to support and fund are all being worked up so they can hit the ground running in year 3, which is 24-25, I believe, Matthew. So it is a little bit frustrating because lots of this stuff does need some seed funding in order to be able to put some resource on the ground, because it is very much a kind of coordination between a number of parties. It's not like the county council can crack skills, or we can crack skills, or businesses, or the institute. We have to really work together in a kind of systematic way. The only other thing I would mention as well is that it is, of course, one of the key opportunities of devolution. And we don't have the ability at the moment to influence our local skills. I can't remember what the I stands for, the LSIP, Local Skills Infrastructure Plan, possibly. We don't have the ability to influence that at the moment because it doesn't sit at a local level. But one of the opportunities of devolution is that that can come down to the local level, and you can really start to influence how the skills system works together and how the funding flows. So I absolutely haven't got you know, silver bullet for you, but we absolutely have to focus as a collaboration across Colchester on skills over the next 2 to 3 years to see if we can get a real step change.
Over the years, if you look at the monitoring statements for how well Colchester is doing, the annual monitoring statement, I mean, the improvement of skills and linking that to the improvement of wage levels has been a theme for the last decade. So we tag it on to, I'm not flogging an old dead horse in these arguments, but it is one of the 5 principal pillars of the new strategic plan, and it's been principal pillar of the old strategic plans. So no one can say we didn't know that there is a grave need for the borough to upgrade its skill levels. So the question the panel should be asking is, you know, what progress have we made in the past? Do we actually have to wait until government divvies up just a little more money to become active in raising the skills across the borough?
It's just a suggestion. And I know, Chair, you will have been involved in these in the past, but it rather feels like it could be the subject of a really interesting single item scrutiny in the future, where we bring in all partners and try and understand between us what might unlock some of the opportunities partly to understand some of the basic issues, because you're absolutely right, it has remained an issue for a very long time. And of course, as I said earlier, there are a number of players, and not any of us own the whole problem. And that becomes the difficulty. So I can't help but think it would be a really interesting, probably get kicked under the table by my leader, but I can't help but think it would be a really interesting, you know, kind of bring key players to the table. And let's have a proper debate about how do we really tackle some of the root causes in skills in Colchester, because we want to have a future skills for a future city programme. I think that would be incredibly useful.
If I may just round that out, I mean, we have good conversations go where they want to go, and so this is one that's off and running. But in terms of the city start point, Alison Andreas' one illustration is part of the sort of the senior leadership team that's looking at what is city status going to bring, what opportunities is it going to bring. They are also But there's no getting away from some of the structural constraints that we have at the moment, which is why your reference to devolution is right. So of course, absolutely support if there's an interest in this. I mean, it is, as you described it, something so significant that it continues to be flagged, and rightly so. But I wouldn't want to overstate also what we can do. But I do want to say that there is an awareness of this, and it is an awareness of this in terms of city status, in the sense of opportunities for business and our young people, our population. So your choice, Chair.
I'm sure whoever's chairman of scrutiny panel next year will be delighted to take that on. But it does seem an area where we should say one of the new aspirations is to fix this problem, and that should be a byproduct of city status. Are there any more comments, colleagues? The report is well received. It covers the areas. It shows that whether it's driven by the aspiration to be the best city or just the aspiration to be the best place in East Anglia doesn't really matter, because we're going to sort of push on regardless. There are perhaps three areas where the panel may wish to make recommendations. The first was that city status must be a whole city approach, and that must be firmly encapsulated in the rules of this game, that everyone counts. And I understand that problem representing an area that stretches from the walls of Roman walls in Lexington all the way through to the Great Tay boundary. Just how different the aspiration is for city across the borough. So a recommendation that whole city approach is absolutely essential. The second recommendation, which I'm not sure will get the support of my colleagues, was that the city status should identify the extra aspirations, and they should be clearly stated. That doesn't seem to have found any significant favour. No. And the third possible recommendation is concerned with the skills priority, and that should be restated as an essential plank needed for prosperity of the city, and come back for scrutiny sometime next year. Are there any other recommendations which colleagues would like to consider?
Yeah, detailed practical plans, not just words.
Yes.
It fits in with the diagrams, and we get these reports, the pages and pages of writing. Can we, what I said earlier was, when we see a diagram of how you're going to lay out a new churchyard, the churchyard, that's good. When we see pages and pages of strategic talk, that's not getting us there. I think it's an important steer that we're trying to, instead of trying to set ourselves objectives in terms of jobs or benefits, we should set ourselves objectives in terms of practical deliverable nuggets of plans. And those, as we go from a sort of common vision to a practical thing, we need to be accelerating ourselves towards those, actually seeing what we're doing and then do it. And not the jobs and the other good things will follow, but we've got to be more pragmatic and practical about it. I'd hope that might be something that we could feed back as a committee.
Could we describe it as a clearer articulation of the key issues?
Can I suggest, Chair, that we're on the same ground here? It was very clearly said, we're at the very beginning, not only of, frankly, it's March of the year, the real year of being a city, but in terms of the tangible changes to place which were described, some of them were able to be illustrated. In some cases, we're weeks into it. So there's no difference between us. We are committed to a very visual and practical display. Perhaps if Councillor Sunnock's recommendations were counted in terms of reinforcing the value of as soon as is practical, then that would put us on the common ground, because we're not, despite whatever paper we've got in front of us, in a different place. It's in a different place in terms of the cycle. We want to get to where you want us to be, William. Can't yet. We want as fast as we can.
And I think that perhaps is one of the slight differences across the table, that there is an expectation, move it away from me, there is an expectation that things would be happening faster now we are a city. There was the hype, we now expect to see the change. And unfortunately, it's been well argued that the change is difficult, it's resource driven, and it is perhaps an unfair expectation to see an immediate change. But nevertheless, we should be articulating that there is an expectation of change, a difference, be it in a difference in attitude or a difference in the place. But there should be a difference which accompanies city status. And on the major projects, we've only had approval for several weeks, but they've been planned, timescales, objectives, and so on. They've been in the coming for the best part of a couple of years. So it's not as though we're starting from scratch on these things. And I think we're just urging a greater awareness of the opportunities. I know, Leader, you hang your head because we know the difficulties.
Only in acceptance and shame.
Yes. We know the difficulties, but there is an expectation of greater things going into Dickens. So then, are we able to tease out a set of easy words for Councillor Sunnock's possible recommendation? Is it the aims and the objectives?
Practical aims and objectives.
Does the
Yes, I'm just saying we should we should be setting ourselves, instead of strategic type Treasury Green Book type objectives, which I understand as an economist, I understand all that stuff. If we want to get stuff done, we need to now make a list of practical things and start working on them at practical level. Not criticizing the fact that a few weeks in we haven't done it. I'm just saying that should be the type of target setting we should do, because I think that'll be more effective in getting actual results than setting ourselves more grandiose strategic type objectives. That's all.
I'm sorry to jump in, but is that not something that the policy panel will be doing anyway with this?
Excellent. If so,
do we need to make a recommendation?
We had quite a lot of talk about how we needed to set ourselves objectives. We needed to have, tangible outcomes and everything else. And I don't think that'll get us anywhere. But having, getting in behind the practical things, focus on the practical level will get us there faster.
And is the policy panel going to deal with things such as 3.5 on the paper, develop a citywide commercial inward investment plan for the city, focusing on the young people? I mean, these are areas where I think the policy panel is not briefed to do that, and it's perhaps our job to identify that it's not, and that there is no overview of the way that is being done at the moment, unless we, the scrutiny panel, ask for these things to come before us at an appropriate time. Councillor Smith.
I think the point that Councillor Sunks has made is that as a group, we prefer seeing a practical list of things that have been achieved rather than a theoretical list. But I accept that if you don't have a strategic plan, same way that you're aiming for the stars, then getting down to the nuts and bolts of how you're building the rocket is going to be difficult if you don't know exactly where you're meant to be going to, because you're building it to go to Mars, and I'm thinking, well, actually, just getting into orbit would be a good thing. So I think we've made it clear what we would like to see practical results are. something that we're all interested in. And perhaps we could leave it at.
Yes.
Okay, so councillor Smith's recommendation is added to the list. Any other recommendations? Going. Gone. So we have three recommendations: whole city, skills, and emphasis on the practical approach. Can we close this item then, colleagues? That takes us up to 1925. Three-minute break. to the world. No crumbs. Yes, good, okay. We now move on to item 13, which is one of the major components of the city moving forward, the town deal. Where again, there's a comprehensive report, although we seem to have covered much of the highlights in the presentation on the previous item. So presumably it isn't necessary to repeat absolutely everything. My principal interest is the timescales, given the pressures on the capital programme. When one looks at the original bids which we made on the town deal, interesting to see how timescales are changing. So I think they're of particular importance in scrutinising to ensure that we, as best as possible, reap the advantages from this particular project at the earliest stage, and we don't see major slippages. But over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. We're going to canter you through a bit of a presentation because there's a lot going on in the town deal. The only two things I say to start is that obviously we came to you in November. So we have agreed to do an annual report. So this is effectively the first of your annual reports. So it's not very long since we came to you before, but we will update you on progress that's been made since we came before. But hopefully in a year's time, we'll be able to come and give you a much fuller update. I don't know how far we'll be able to start to get into outcomes, but we can certainly give you that kind of real view of the outputs that we've delivered. So I'm just going to quickly do a little bit of positioning, and then I'll let Matthew do the interesting bit. If you can go on, I'm not going to go over this because you all know the context for the town deal, and of course it's in the report. The only thing I wanted to just draw your attention to is that, you know, what we will tell you is that projects are progressing well. And actually the majority of milestones at the moment are being achieved. We have got one project which is significantly behind time, but all the rest are on track at the moment. But unsurprisingly, there are issues around cost inflation across the programme, but they are being managed and mitigated. So we'll walk you through that as we go through. I'm not going to go through, next slide, please. I'm not going to go through the detail in here, but I just wanted to kind of point out that engagement is at the heart of the town deal. We have done absolutely loads of it. And I can't even begin to tell you how many schools and people have been up Jumbo alone. So, you know, it's really important that people can get the kind of tangible experience of what town deal is going to deliver. And I just quickly, Councillor Leah, I just want to pick up on the point about the investment. So town deal and levelling up funding are government funding streams, and they had really tight parameters around them. So we couldn't bid for them for geographies outside of the geography that we've bid for. So I just wanted to say that because we would, if we could. I mean, this man next to me can pretty much get money for anything and anywhere. He's absolutely amazing at it. I mean, we have brought investment into Colchester in a way that I've never seen before through Matthew. I spare his blushes. He's brilliant. But we have to work within the parameters of the funding streams. I know that wasn't the point you were making, but, you know, just to point that out. But we have, but actually in one of our recent surveys that we did around the future of the city, the city centre was the top priority for actually pretty much everybody. So, you know, there is a desire, isn't there, to see investment in the city centre. So just to reassure you, there's an awful lot of engagement work going on around the town deal projects, and we have Claire Ratcliffe who leads that work for us. So just to go on, I'm just going to do a quick bit, and I thought I'd show you just a few photos. Not that this one is about progress, because you get a couple of photos of Jumbo, but we always like to see Jumbo, don't we? Just some important things that are moving on. So the digital skills hub, and we have a digital skills hub and a digital working hub. So I'll just make the difference. So the digital skills hub will be, to most of you familiar as, it's on the Wilson marriage site. So it's the repurposing of a building over there, underway over there. And I'll show you a couple of photos in a minute, but they're fully under progress. Construction is underway on that particular project, which is very exciting. Key progress as well. And there's our colleagues at the Preservation Trust have put the Jumbo Lottery round one bid into the NHLF, which is a huge. I have completed those lottery bids myself, and that's a huge undertaking. So huge progress being made around Jumbo, and also the expression of interest, which is the stage before the round one bid, has been submitted for Holy Trinity. So we're sequencing all of our bids into the Heritage Lottery Fund, because we have a few at the moment with the castle as well. So we're sequencing them carefully to make sure that we can get as much money from that funding pot as possible. If you just go on, this is the space that is the Digital Skills Hub at the Wilson Marriage. They're repurposing all of this, so there'll be a brand new state-of-the-art digital skills hub there, which will provide the opportunity for digital skills training all the way through from entry level right up to much more kind of sophisticated skills levels. So, and it's the great thing about this project is it's a building in its own right within that campus, so it can have its own time scales around it. It can be open to the public, so it will have a kind of community feel to it as well, so it will feel really accessible. They are intending to have that project completed by summer so that they can hit the intake of students in September. So that's really exciting, and that one's underway. And the conversation about skills earlier, of course, you know, making sure that we have strong digital skills across all aspects of our communities is absolutely fundamental if you want to upskill anyone at the moment. So on the next one, this is the Digital Working Hub. So this is where we are delivering both training and business incubation and grow on space for digital and tech companies. So you'll see that the old bus station building has gone. So the demolition has happened, and if you've been around that site, there's some really interesting archaeology going on at the moment, which we are carefully picking through, because quite understandably it's quite a significant site. So we're taking our time with the archaeology on that. Tenders are due to go out shortly for the construction of the building. Majority of the funds for the building, of course, are coming from the Southeast LEP. So under their previous Growing Places Fund, the contribution from the town deal is to ensure that it can become the digital hub that we need. So it's to all the infrastructure, particularly the equipment. On the next one, if we go down, so you may have seen there's been some pretty extensive consultation and engagement on what we fondly know as LC WIP 4. This is the cycling and walking route that goes down East Hill and then all the way out across the moors and to the university. It's a really, really important cycling route and connection for the city centre to key parts of our community and onto the university. This consultation has gone very well, because we got stuck into it and supported our county council colleagues and made sure that the church and all the key residents and businesses around there were spoken to directly so that we could pick up their concerns. This one there's going to be a slightly higher level of investment into the city centre part of the route because of the materials required, because it's in such a sensitive heritage area, but we can still manage that additional investment by smoothing it across the whole of the route, because there are parts of the route that don't need the upgrades to quite the same level. So that's really exciting. And again, that piece of consultation was really important because we can't start getting underway with the first phase of that, which is attracting in some active travel funding. So it's not just town deal funding going into this route. We've managed to get a disproportionate amount of the active travel funding through the county council, and we have to get that spent. So we need to get on with the first phase of the East Hill route. So that's really exciting as well. So that one is through consultation. The feedback from that will now come in, affect the design, and then we'll be getting on with that. So I'm going to hand over to Matthew now.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Erin. So what I'm going to do for expediency is just focus really on those as ambers. I think the green self-explanatory, completely on track in terms of time and cost, and just give a little bit of a narrative on the ones for ambers and why they're ambers. So the digital working hub, as Lindsay's explained, that's the building in Queen Street that was formerly the Eastern National Bus Depot that's now gone, and very shortly we'll be going out to tender at the end of this month to get a contractor for the construction phase. That in terms of the time overrun, it's taken a bit longer to do demolition than we thought it was going to do. There's been a few complications on the site, none of which are detrimental. We've got plenty of time. There's enough time beyond the end of when that's going to finish, even with the slippage, before the end of the town deal funding window, which is March 2026, with some margin. And there hasn't really been at this time a cost increase. It's actually on budget. What's happened is, because of the funding package is a combination, as Lindsay said, about the local growth fund from SELET and the council by the town deal. We haven't actually gone out to tender yet, so we haven't got a problem at the moment. We've actually got a contingency in the budget of 20%, which is a standard contingency for construction project. We don't know we've got a problem until we get the tenders back, which won't be for some time. So right now, actually, it's a potential problem, but it isn't a problem at the moment. So that's that one. On the youth facilities, the main problem that was slight delays in procurement, and because it's affecting a youth centre that they can only do works during school holidays. Therefore, if it can't be done at Easter, the next time it can be done is the school holidays in the summer. So that's all that is. Again, well within the timescales, plenty of time, no material challenge really. And the next slide, please, Aaron. Thank you. Holy Trinity Church, we are due to make some urgent repairs to the roof. That's not being funded through town, that's actually been funded from another source, but that has been delayed slightly. We're going to now be starting it in April, hopefully concluding it in June. But again, there's work that I need to do in terms of that other National Lottery Heritage Fund bid that needs to be done. We've got the expression of interest approved. Now the main bid needs writing. There's a lot more negotiation and engagement to be done. So actually, it doesn't make any material difference to the timeline. We're still within the window, as I said, with that, as I said before, with the margin of time between the end of that now finishing, even with the slippage, and the town deal window, March 26, we've got plenty of time. I've got no real concerns at this stage. The next two, the two public realm schemes, they're Holy Trinity and Kerberos. The reason they're in amber is purely because, again, they haven't gone out to the final tender. So we haven't got that final cost certainty. We do know we have got a contingency of 20% in our budgets. So we have some confidence that even with cost inflation, which is starting to stabilize at the moment, we will be okay. There won't be, we're not, that situation won't deteriorate any further. And then similarly with the next, the highways, sorry, yes, St. Nicholas Square, those issues are being resolved or have been resolved or close to being resolved. The materials are ready. I've actually seen the granite. It's there, not far from this building, ready to go, ready to get built. It's just some final agreements from Essex Highways in terms of the highway scheme and the implications for the highways, but that's all in hand and being resolved. The Greenstead scheme, Greenstead Tamariskell Way, there we have had a slight delay in land acquisition. We've got the money for the land acquisition, but actually securing that land is taking a bit longer than we'd anticipated, which means the social housing, the affordable housing, we're going to delay that slightly. Again, that's not detrimental to the town deal delivery, but the hub, the community hub, is part of the town deal scheme that we're prioritising, and that will happen well in time. We're going out to tender for that. We've been out to tender. We're just about to evaluate the responses for the architect soon, very soon. They're actually in. We just need to evaluate them. Again, costs. Again, we're within the budget window. And again, until we've done that exercise with an architect and a quantity surveyor, we won't have accurate costs, but we do have that contingency in the budget. So we haven't got a problem currently. What I would say on that and others is we have other ways of value engineering and also of actually sourcing co-funding from some of these projects, which we've done quite effectively. Okay, thanks. So next slide, please. Okay, so those are all green, which is marvelous. Okay, and the next slide. Okay, so again, I've probably said some of this already, so I'll just skip over anything that I've already covered or Lindsay's already covered. There you go, St. Nicholas Square. The trees are gone. But there are new trees coming. I think that's an important message. It's not good to cut trees down, but it's good when there's going to be new trees that are better and more climate resilient and more attractive in the long run, admittedly. So construction will commence there soon. Next slide, thank you. Again, no problems with either of those two schemes. Jumbo, it was worth pointing out, it's been a brilliant journey with North Essex Heritage, who now completed their round one bid. And we've had a lot of very close working across my colleagues in the economy team, also our events company, and the museums team, because they've got a lot of wisdom and knowledge in how to try and run a large building once it's been refurbished. And they've really listened to that sort of suggestions, feedback. Mercury Theatre, similarly, they've got a lot of experience with large capital projects. So there's been a really nice learning journey for North Essex Heritage, and similarly, we're learning from them. So as I get stuck into my next National Lottery Heritage Fund bid, they will help me to do that. So we're all sort of sharing learning through this process. Thanks, Erin. Next one. As I've mentioned, Holy Trinity, we just need to make these emergency repairs to the roof purely to stop any further deterioration of the building, of the fabric of the building. And it will take a little bit of time to get through the process of getting the co-funding. Probably take another 12, maybe 18 months. While that's happening, there is more work going on to sort of negotiate on, ultimate end users of that building. So that is all happening. It's just going to take slightly longer than we thought. But in terms of the town deal allocation of funding, it's good, it's on track. I'm fairly confident with the co-funding, but you never know until you get the bids in. Next one, please, Erin. Again, those two, as I mentioned before, those haven't gone out to final contract, but the work is being done within colleagues within the council and our company Amphora, and also external architects and designers. They're doing that work at the moment. Thanks, Erin. Yeah. 5G. So this is the one where we're going to use virtual reality and augmented reality at the castle with headsets to sort of show people the heritage there and outside the castle. It's on track. So we're doing the tendering now for the physical infrastructure, i.e. the kits, the technology, I'm not a techie person, but the actual things that go on the wall that give you your 5G signal. We're buying that now, we're procuring that now. The next step will be to basically buy the software, the bit that sits under that, and the actual what will become the user experience, i.e. the headsets and things people have. So again, it's on track, it's happening now. Next, please, Owen. Digital skills hub, Liz has already covered that one. Yeah, next one. Covered that pretty much. I think I've explained all those issues already, so I won't do it again. Erin, next one, thank you. Cycle route, so Lindsay's covered that. The first stage is obviously at this end at East Hill, but it goes all the way to Greenstead and the university. So again, it's all on track. I've mentioned the reasons that's running slightly late. It's managed. We've got a plan for that work. Next one, Erin, thank you. Greenstead, again, I've explained why that's running slightly late and why the land acquisition is taking slightly longer, but the community hub is we're planning for that to happen well within the time frame, and that's the important bit in terms of town deal and outcomes of town deal. Okay, yep, and the next one. So this is a scheme where we're basically bringing bikes to Greenstead and giving those to people. It's a scheme that's already operating in Jaywick. And we'll be the second, I think, in Essex. It's been run by Essex County Council and the local Active Essex. It's again, the planning of that is happening. I think the bikes are here or coming soon. I've got a feeling that's going well. It's on track. It's close to being delivered. And the next one, please. Okay, so I think Lizzie's covered some of this. I'll just, we know cost inflation is an issue across all capital projects. Everyone's well aware of that, but we have effective mitigations for that across every project. In some cases, that consists of, the work now, and in terms of trying to manage those costs and do some mitigation in terms of, managing those budgets, value engineering. And in other cases, it's just having those contingencies ready, being ready to use them and willing to use them, and be confident in having those ready and secured. Not being afraid to go after co-funding if we need it. So it's actually, once you've got funding, it's relatively easy or easier to then go after co-funding in some, not all in all instances, but in some, to actually get a further pot of money to bolster that money that you've got, whether that's through community funders, whether that's through other government sources of funding. So that's how that's happening. And that's it, I think. Thanks, Erin. Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
We have a granularity of red, amber and green on the projects. Probably an unfair question, but how many of the ambers are just over the border from the red? Can we assume that anything that's amber is not in serious danger or problems, or are some of them lurking near the danger area?
Nothing at present. So most are amber because we are still going through the process of getting the clarification. For example, costs will be clarified once you go out to contract. That's really only the point at the moment, that we get the absolute clarification, and then so lots of the kind of ambers are around just that cost, but nothing is significant at the moment that we are worried about. We have a reasonable amount of time for the delivery of the town deal programme as well. We've tried to stage the projects across the entire programme, but because we have until 2026 for this, it is at the moment there's no issues around the timing either.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I've got two issues. The first one is I'm having this horrible feeling of deja vu. Being told that we haven't gone out to contract yet, but it's all going to be okay because we've got 20% contingency and we can always get lots of other funding coming in. And I was thinking when I was in this room many years ago with a project some of you might know called First Sight, where we were given exactly the same assurances and it didn't turn out. It strikes me that some of these projects are surely going to be facing serious cost pressures because they were budgeted for a year, 2 years ago. We've now seen inflation of 15–20% biting through them. So building costs have gone up even more. I'm really struggling with that. And particularly the Heart of Greenstead one, we're talking about big money there with the housing element of it. I would suspect that is seriously in danger of not being delivered unless we're seeing some more money coming in from that. So could you give me some reassurance on those two first? And then I have another one on that I'll come back on later.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a really important question and it's why we had flagged it. So just a couple of things to say, not all the projects are for us to deliver. So for example, the funding that goes to the Essex County Hospital site for their public realm is a contribution. So it's a contribution. It's for the county council to work out if costs go up or costs go down. We're just making a contribution. So the town deal programme is not at risk there, for example, and there are a few projects like that. So for example, the cycling walking route, which is over 4 million of the programme, is also an Essex County Council project. So it's not for the town deal to find any additional funding for that. We might at times have to cut our cloth on that route, and we've already worked out as part of the kind of contingency when we didn't think we were going to get the active travel funding as to how to manage that. So you do the essential upgrades and then further will come. So the risk overall to the 19 million is reduced because several of those projects are not. Jumbo is a contribution, for example. So, the risk is managed to a degree. Heart of Greenstead, I think, is a really important question. The team are working through what that community health and wellbeing hub will look like with the community. As you probably know, it's a really community-led project. There's a local board, health are on it, the university's on it, and it's run within the community and has that huge kind of community drive behind it. The town deal element is just for the health and wellbeing hub. So that's the element that we have to make sure we deliver as part of this programme. Now we have an amount of money on the table. At the moment, what they're scoping is the ideal. But we have health, we have county council, we have others around the table there. And we've already talked to the county council about their levelling up ambitions in Greenstead. So if all of the ambitions that they have are to be delivered through that health and wellbeing hub, then others will need to contribute. The amount of money we have on the table is the amount of money we have on the table for town deal. We'll have to look, and we're looking at the lottery fund. So until that completely gets scoped and placed to the market, we don't actually know the final cost of that, but there is plenty of opportunity to either say to others, right, okay, this is the sum you now need to cough up, or this is the sum, we're going to have to scale it back because it can deliver what it was originally intended to deliver. So I think it's a really important question, but we're managing it very carefully project by project. The housing delivery is not part of the town deal programme, it is part of the wider Heart of Greenstead. And as you probably know, Councillor Smith, because you're generally all over the HRA, it's an HRA earmarked project. So it will be one that until we can get the land from Notting Hill Genesis and the properties, that the housing piece will work at the point at which we acquire the land. So there will be risks in that. Of course, as you well know, modelling housing delivery within the HRA is very different to modelling housing delivery within the general fund, because we can smooth the costs over a much longer term. So, it all needs to be balanced at the right point in time, but we're not at that point in delivery in Heart of Greenstead yet. But I think it's a very important question to raise.
Thank you. I still have some concerns about the Heart of Greenstead's financial situation. But can I turn to another one which is puzzling me a little bit? Looking at the digital working hub in Queen Street, in the appendix, we're showing cost 5.5 million and 12 jobs. That seems a very expensive job creation scheme, because we're coming at about 400,000 a job. Whereas when we go down to the Wilson Marriage Centre, we've got 1 million and we're looking to help 210 people into employment. That seems to be a much, much better scheme at the moment. I think something must be wrong here, because if it isn't, surely we should be spending 2 million in the Wilson Marriage Centre and getting 400 people into employment rather than the 12 people who are getting it there. So I think something's wrong in the appendix there. So can you please enlighten me?
You've tripped over this on previous occasions, if I remember.
If I can come in on the housing, the jobs numbers. So when I write business cases, I take a very conservative view of the numbers. And the numbers you've got are net direct jobs. So in other words, before you take away all the multipliers and displacements and stuff like that. So you're actually going to create a lot more indirect jobs. And actually, if you look at those displacements, it's much higher. I think when I wrote the original business case, it's something like 30 or so jobs that scheme's going to create. It's actually a lot. And also businesses created. So it doesn't just give you those direct jobs. It actually, over the course of the 5 or 10 years or even longer evaluation process, is substantial. But it's just at that point in time, it does look small. So I do take that point.
It's not what we're seeing in the appendix. And if we're being told that these figures are sort of not that reliable, then I'm feeling even more uncomfortable at the financial figures, because from my traditional background, I just love figures. And I'm with Councillor Sunnox here. And if I'm saying, well, actually, these figures aren't real, then I'm struggling with some of the other figures. So could you help me a little bit there, please?
Yeah, no, sorry, we're definitely not saying they're not real. We are saying those are the figures that we put within the business case to government, because they're the direct figures that you can attribute. And we have to be accountable for all of these. But this is an incubation and a growth centre. So businesses will come and go from this centre. The idea is that they move in here, they grow, they're supported to grow, and then they move out and hopefully take on lovely new headquarters in Colchester City. And grow and employ more and more and more people. But how far you can attribute to the direct investment is difficult. So we've been very careful in what we've said to government. We can evidence, because this is effectively our audit trail to government. But we know that a grow on centre and an incubation centre delivers way more than that to the economy. So we're very comfortable with the jobs that we put in the appendix, because that's what we can directly point to government. But we have also articulated that bigger opportunity in terms of business growth and grow on. They will also, because of the operator we've put in there, which wasn't originally part of the ambition, but because of the operator going in there, they will also do training and deliver an awful lot of kind of skills uplift in virtual reality and AI across a lot of our businesses in Colchester, including our health and public sector partners. So there'll be a lot of knock on from this centre, but we're absolutely reliable. We're just very careful what we say to government. We are going to directly show them as evidence, because that's what we're accountable for.
Yeah, but in terms of reviewing these programmes, this is the second time we've tripped up over the fact that we're proposing sort of £4.6 million to support 8 jobs in this particular location, without appreciating that it actually influenced a considerably greater number of jobs, and the skills transfer was very significant, but that wasn't captured in the way the people data was expressed in the business case. So I think we really need a note to explain it. Otherwise, it's going to come up a third and fourth time every time we look at it, in fact. Fox, welcome to the table.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to build on what Lindsay and Matthew had said, because I think this goes a lot back to the discussion you had previously around skills, and what is being offered in the Digital Skills Hub on the Wilson Marriage site is a lot of that will be getting people who aren't currently in employment into employment. So there's a whole range of the skills level there that is looking to be addressed. And so I think that's why it's easier for Essex County Council to say that you'd get higher numbers of people through the door initially and into employment. Whereas I think what's been articulated around what's happening in Queen Street is the incubation of businesses, and that over the longer term, that has a real opportunity to scale massively, precisely because of the high-tech nature of the digital offering there, and also that that's probably at the higher end of the wage level as well. You know, but potentially looking at really well-paid jobs in digital industries, and the work that will go on there is also around the space that those businesses will be able to collaborate with each other, and the opportunity for businesses to really work and think about how that ecosystem of the digital economy in Colchester develops too. So there's probably something around a narrative here that perhaps isn't hasn't been communicated, but I do think that both of those schemes have real potential to impact and improve in the local economy.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Sorry. Thank you very much. I should also declare an interest, because there was some mention about youth groups, and I am a trustee of the St Anne's Youth Club, which may well be involved in some of those projects. So that needs to be declared. Sorry.
Noted. Any more points, Councillor Smith?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. We now go to Councillor Sunnock.
Yes, thanks for that. The funding agreements, we keep on talking about the funding agreements. Are they in the public domain? And presumably there's a business case that's submitted, and then later that morphs into a funding agreement of some kind. That's question number one. Question number two, this is sort of I've tried to understand what's going on at Tamarisk Way, because it's the biggest of the projects, and I've been very kindly, someone sent me the green book submission, which I appreciated. I couldn't figure out from that actually what we're doing. I couldn't figure out which buildings we're pulling down and which ones we're putting up, and what we're going to achieve. So it's coming back to the same point, and that flows on to the third one, which is financial appraisals are difficult for some of these where the benefits are social, but they can and they should be done. And I'm sure you would say they were done. And it would be so good to know what we're doing, how much it's going to cost, and then look at the value, not just of the social benefits, but of the actual assets that we have afterwards. Where it's a building like in Tamarisk Way, we're going to have some valuable buildings after we've done that. And there's also a little warning there about making plans for properties we don't own. I mean, I don't know whether the landowner there that's causing delay has any obligation to sell, or whether we're just saying pretty please to them. But, you know, we really have to control the land where we're going to do some of these schemes.
So just on that last point, it's Notting Hill Genesis, their housing association. We've been talking to them for quite some time. They've had a change in their senior management. So it's just a case of waiting until the new chief exec is in and up and running. But they've indicated they are keen that they don't have hardly any properties left in Colchester. So they are keen to have that conversation with us. We just haven't been able to get it across the line yet because of the changes in the senior management team. So I think that's probably the only one that I wanted to pick up. Do you want to pick up the other points?
Thank you, Lindsay. So just to pick up your point about the funding agreement and business cases, they are two very separate things. So as we the council are the accountable body for the town deal programme, which means we contract with government, and that's literally just a heads of terms agreement between council and government to say we will deliver these outputs for this budget by then. That's all it is. But the business case, which is I think the bit you're really referring to, those are in the public domain. So we have a business case. There were 7 business cases which were prepared last March, and those all had to be approved both by government, by our town deal board, and by cabinet before we could actually then sort of finalise those go forward. What those do, and you're right, I do take the distinction. There was a scheme in 2018 for the whole site. That scheme isn't happening as it stands at the moment, because what we want to do is focus on the community hub first and do that. That's what we're doing initially, and that is all on land that's currently owned by the council. But the wider ambition, as Lindsay's already pointed out, is that wider housing scheme, which we do want to do, subject to land acquisition. And I think the master plan that was prepared 3 or 4 or 5 years ago is no longer the master plan. What we would want to do is bring architects on board to do it again with community consultation, extensive community consultation, and get it right. So I would say that the business case is good. It gets you to a point, but realistically, more work will need to be done at that stage with the housing scheme. Thank you.
I'm just concerned by how woolly it is after a few years, and wonder whether, you know, it's going back to communication, isn't it? What are we actually doing? And we got to, I see they're talking about it being like Bromley by Bow, for example. I know Bromley by Bow very well, actually. It's near where my family has a business, so I know it. I know the people who run it. I don't understand. Where is there a website or something I'm missing? Is there some source of information? And in particular, are those agreements between the council and government, those critical agreements, are they available to councillors to see?
Just, I'll let you deal with the last point, Matthew, but just it's not at all woolly. And I think, to be fair, the Heart of Greenstead project absolutely is rooted in the community, and it needs to be. So an awful lot of time has been spent, and key politicians in the local area have been very involved in this as well, building up the governance mechanisms, bringing on the board the right partners so that we are able to get the right outcomes. So the university's been brought on board. They're bringing some funding in to do some proper research and work with the community to understand what a community health and wellbeing hub will mean for that local community. We're building a new model of provision here for Colchester. And although the Bromley by Bow model is great, it works there. We need to work out what's going to work in Greenstead. This is a bit of a once in a lifetime opportunity in Greenstead. We've tried to assist in different ways in that community. We actually have quite a significant amount of funding to do something, but we want to make sure it's done with the community. They have different views. You know, some of them have different views about how the housing should come forward, and we have to take time to work with that community to make sure it comes forward in a way that they're comfortable with. So we always said we would take the full length of the town deal programme on Greenstead right from day one to make sure that we could deliver against those community priorities. So I make absolutely no apologies for the fact that that project is taking time to come forward in the way that it needs to. They've moved to a really important stage, so appointing architects is really important. For them, it's appointed by that governance board, which is, you know, as I say, rooted in the community. And then they will be able to see whether all of the designs and ideas that they put on the table are able to be delivered in a practical way within the land constraints that are there. But that's all part of the process of taking the community on board with us. So it's absolutely not woolly. You are very welcome, and I know you've already met Rory, but you're very welcome, you know, to go and observe. It's not a behind closed doors board meeting. You know, anyone can go and observe what's going on there. I actually think it's something really quite special, because we're taking the time to do it properly with that community. But we will, once the architect gets underway, you know, in the not too distant future, have some clear plans for what the health and wellbeing hub will look like. And then that can go out to tender to be delivered, because the land is ours. But it does impact quite significantly on some of the facilities that are already within that area. So it's quite right and proper that we take our time. So I just wanted to get that point across, because, you know, we can't just do things at pace because we want to do things at pace. We have to do things in the right way on some of these projects. Do you want to pick up the second point, Matthew?
Thank you, Lindsay. So coming back to the heads of terms agreement, to my knowledge, it's not in the public domain. I don't think it is. But it's literally, all it is a contract between us and government. It will be signed by our chief executive, our section 151 officer, and in this case, the chair of the We Are Colchester board. And it will be signed by government, by the minister. And it's literally, all it is a copy paste of the town investment plan and what was agreed before our business cases. So it's just a cut and paste, literally, of the information that was already, that is publicly available, of what, and that's those figures that you've seen tonight coming through that appendix. So I don't know if that helps. Thank you.
Is there any reason why councillors should not inspect that document?
We were just having the same discussion. I can't at the moment think why it couldn't be shared. So we will make sure that happens.
And the appraisals?
Yes, the appraisals are on my computer.
They're already in the public domain. So
Yeah.
so what you'll probably have on, yeah, they've all been shared about a year ago, last March. They were all put in the public domain, council website.
Yeah, and they've been scrutinised. They've been through our gaze at least 2 occasions. So we're happy. This is only coming back on a regular basis because of the uncertainties which our officers have already advised us of. So what would probably settle into an annual appraisal of the town deal programme started off as a sort of 3-month, then 6-month, then yearly, just during that rather difficult formative stage where there was a lot going on, a lot being agreed, a lot of information for members to assimilate. But now the project is settling down. I guess it probably needs to relax to a 1-year visit to the scrutiny panel.
Could someone send me a link to all that lovely information? Thanks.
Chair, just going to say what we will do is make sure that we've got this drawn together. There is something about where things are to be found easily, but there's absolutely no question about the robustness of the scrutiny process as shown tonight, or that the whole of the process is a very open one. But if we can make it easier, we'll do that.
That's fine.
And just to add, I attended the last We Are Colchester board meeting in David's place, and what I felt there is that what we've got there is a range of skills across that board, people in business, people from the community, the local authorities all represented, and also a representative from DLUC. And what was clear was their knowledge of the projects and what's happening with them. Not that there aren't ever, bumps along the road in terms of how you deliver them. That, for example, cost of inflation, as we've discussed tonight, but a clear feeling that in Colchester we were on top of all of those issues, and probably a sense that in other places they don't have that same level of confidence that in Colchester the town deal is delivering as expected from government. And of course, one of the real expectations from government always was that there'd be a real sense of delivery in these projects. What's great to see at Wilson Marriage Centre is that is that's happening in Queen Street. That's happening, and I certainly felt that there was confidence from government as well as confidence from all of the stakeholders that the town deal really is moving forward in the way that they all imagined it would too.
members of the Scrutiny Panel take very seriously our role as the responsible financial authority. Although there's a separate board to decide on the programme, we have to account for the finances and the funds that are being used, which is why we have to give such close attention and detail to ensure that the projects are running as government wants, as the board wants, and to the satisfaction of our 151 officer. Councillor Laws.
Great stuff. On Holy Trinity, are the timescales compatible with the potential future tenant? We want some reassurance on that. And out of interest, because of the timescales that we're looking at now, does this impact on the refurbishment grants for other churches that are being looked into? I just fear if we're all scrabbling around for the same pots of money potentially. And then two more very succinct points. I don't know who's creating the CGIs. I don't know whether it's in highways or whether it's us, but push back hard, because we could do with some photoreal CGIs. I get quite annoyed when architects give us their little scribbles. We've got one of the leading property marketing agencies within this city who do photoreal images. I think we all see a bit more of that, and that way we won't have people cycling into awnings and things like that. If there is a need also to spend any money or to use marketing in-house in terms of the hoardings or posters in key sites, I think we should really go for it, because it's a win for us all, the government and the city council. It might be that neighbouring buildings or shops are happy to display posters, and it won't necessarily need to be expensive, big waterproof hoardings at key sites. But I still think we should go for it and sing loudly about how we're all working together, so that those that don't watch these meetings and read the Gazette avidly see as they're walking around with their shopping bags that things are happening.
If I could just come in first, I'll let Matthew do the detail because he's much better on that. Community 360, who will be the end occupiers of Holy Trinity Church, are still very interested. They're just understandably quite nervous about taking on a very old building until we've de-risked it. So they don't have the expertise of going for heritage lottery funding. We do. So having now kind of commissioned the repairs, and then we will put the bid in, we will do all of the de-risking to get it to, kind of that delivery point. And then I think they will be much more comfortable, and they have said they're much more comfortable. They certainly don't want to walk away from the project. They just don't have, how busy they are. They don't have the skills and the capacity at the moment to do all the hard work to get the building right. We can do that. That's absolutely fine. So they're still on board. They're still really, really keen, just to kind of reinforce that point. But I have already, the team has already made contact with our leading agency on CGIs. Not to say we can place directly with them because we're subject to public procurement rules, but they certainly have some amazing expertise and are really interested in whether there's some kind of partnership approach that we can do, because they're quite interested in doing something around place that's different to marketing, housing developments, for example. So it's an interesting conversation. Really, we're just starting to do some market engagement about what technology's out there, what could we use, what's relatively easy to access, because we need to get something up and running visually pretty quickly. So, I mean, it's so new, I haven't even talked to David and Adam about it yet, because we're literally trying to find places that I don't want to say to these guys, yes, we can deliver this. Well, I've got no idea whether I can. So, but we're having those early conversations, and it's really exciting, trying to bring something forward that really visualizes the whole of Colchester, and what's planned, quite apart from what we'd like to do, would be amazing. So we're looking at that. We're looking at that technology, and we have had a conversation with them already, a very interesting one. I just wanted to point out as well, what's been really helpful as part of the strategic plan refresh and the ability to allocate a bit of funding to some of those priorities is we've already been able to put on the table 200,000 to invest in some of the early work in the city centre, and the county council has now matched that. So we've got a little bit of a pot. It's not very much, I know, in the greater scheme of things. But if you're trying to commission some of this work, which is really important in terms of getting public confidence, public understanding about what we're doing, because we've got a lot of big change coming, and it's hard when you bring big change. then so I think that's just a really important thing just to put on the table, because I absolutely agree with you. We need to kind of get that moving. So hopefully that gives you some assurance. But Matthew, I'll let you do the detail.
Thank you, Lindsay. So the only thing I wanted to come back to, and it's a very good point you made very well, was synchronization of the various bids. So as we've both mentioned earlier, we've got our bid, the Natural Lottery Heritage Fund, 3 bids going in across a similar timescale. One is Jumbo, one is Holy Trinity Church, Natural History Museum is the third. We're talking to each other and we're talking to lotteries. So we as a project manager from each of those, we're all having regular conversations. So as you know, there's like 3 or 4 cycles a year. So we're again, when does the expression of interest go? When does round 1 bid go? When does round 2 bid go? Have we got an appropriate timescale for each? Is it reasonable? Is it going to cause us a problem in terms of deliveries and other priorities? There's a lot going on, as you've seen tonight. And also with the lead officer from the lottery. So we're all talking to her together, but also separately. So we can actually, she can help us actually navigate that. But absolutely the intention is to never duplicate. So we really want a nice pipeline of projects, hopefully all of which would be funded, all being well, but they reinforce each other. And I think by showing that sort of really joined up, seamless strategic sort of way of looking at it, that helps all those projects in the bit as well, because the whole is greater than some of the parts. But it's a good point. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, colleagues? It appears to be a programme which has in no way deteriorated since we last scrutinised it. In fact, the assurances are that as it moves forward, the project is sort of stable. The target dates are being met, even if some having to be relaxed just a little more than we would have hoped for, particularly on the Grinstead projects. But we understand why. We've asked the questions. We have a full understanding. We are assured none of the projects are anywhere near the red zone, and it looks as though it's on an even keel. So unless there are proposals to make recommendations, I think we just note that the project is running well. Councillor Smith.
I think Councillor Laws made a suggestion regarding the advertising and the branding of the project. And I think perhaps that might be a suitable recommendation. Yeah.
Agree with that.
Yes, if we make a recommendation which doesn't unduly criticise our own departmental CGI people.
No need to be shy. Let's go for it.
Yeah, yes, okay.
I think, Chairman, it's probably important because coming from a recommendation from this panel, it is spending money on advertising, and in these difficult financial times, the Cabinet might be criticised for spending money just on advertising without the cross-party support coming from this panel to say, actually, what you put forward here is a very good idea.
Yeah, that's a fun.
And I think on that, because it's not just about, as has been said, about Town Deal, but it's about the Levelling Up Fund. It's about all the changes that are going to happen in the city centre. And we met last week as team coaches with the county council, and I think that Kevin Bentley was on exactly the same page as us, that unless we tell the story to residents about what is going to happen about their city centre and how it changed, because there are so many different parts to it, and there will be some changes that come in the next couple of years, and there will be some changes that come over a longer period of time. Unless we're able to tell that story to people properly, they won't buy into it and feel like they're part of it, and can see that some of the disruption that will happen will be is necessary, but we'll see the benefits of it. So it was really encouraging, I think, that both authorities were on the same page in that respect, and that we and that money, the right amount of money does need to be spent in the right way, so that we're not only engaging with residents, but really telling them about that story of how culture's changing.
So the panel welcomes elevation of the presentation of these projects visually throughout the city.
As part of a wider narrative, that would be really helpful to us, actually. Thank you, Paul, for raising it.
Okay, no other proposals? So we agree on that?
Yeah.
Thank you. That takes us on to Item 14, for which we have to exclude the press and public, although they're not here, it's still a requirement that the clause be read out in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 and in accordance with the local authorities executive arrangements access to information England regulations 2000 as amended, to exclude the public, including the press, from the meeting, so that any items containing exempt information, for example, confidential, personal, financial and legal advice in part B of this agenda, printed on yellow paper, can be decided. Exempt information is defined in section 101 and schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Sorry, I have to read it all, but that is a requirement. The next, is that agreed? Great, good.